If I take my motorbike tire and I do this, will the tire break or not? If the bike stands on the tire like this for 6 months, will the tire become oval or not? And if this tire is 5 years old, is it expired or it's still good? This is what I will explain you in today's videos. And we're going to talk about tires. So we will see how to store the street tires, the racing tires and the off-road tires. Here with me I have 3 different types of tires, which have been provided by Metzeller, which also gave me all the informations about this video. Now, here we have a Metzeller M9RR, which is the tire that I tested last year in Spain. We have a set of racing tires, Metzeller K1 or K2, I don't remember. And we have a set of slick tires meant for amateurs, which is called Metzeller TD. And you're probably wondering, why do I have these 3 different types of tires? Because all the things that I'm going to say in this video depend on which tires we're talking about. The things that are good for the street tires may not be good for the racing tires. And the things that are good for the racing tires may not be good for the TD tires. About the off-road tires, everything we're going to say about street tires will be the same about the off-road tires. The first topic to discuss is how to store your tires. The most important thing is to keep the tires away from all the climate factors like sunlight, snow, sandstorms. It's not important to cover them, it's not important to keep them warm, it's important to keep them away from the climate factors. Whether you keep them horizontal or vertical, it doesn't matter, but you must keep in mind one very important thing. If you keep the tires like this, in vertical, everything is fine. If you keep them horizontal like this, everything is fine. But as long as we're talking about 2, 3, 4 tires, nothing matters. But if you pile up like 10 tires and considering that each rear tire is about 6 kilos, we're talking about that the tire at the bottom is holding 54 kilos of weight. Therefore, that tire will deform. Now, if the tire deforms, nothing bad happens, because once we put it on the wheel, we inflate it, we warm it up, it gets back to its shape. But they suggest not to do this for a long time. I mean, if you keep them piled up like this for a few days, nothing matters. If you keep them piled up for months or years, they suggest not to do it. I mean, at this point you're saying, okay, but if nothing bad happens, why should I care? Personally, when we're talking about tires and we're talking about something that costs 300 to 400%, and the tire, it's what keeps the bike up, which may cost 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100,000 euros. And if you crash, you might get injured. Personally, I would do everything I can to keep the tires safe. And this is true for any kind of tires. If the tires are mounted on the wheels and we keep the bike like this, still in the garage, standing on the tires, and if the tires are at the right pressure and we keep it like this just for a few months, for example for the winter, nothing happens. But if we keep the bike like this for many months or even years, that would be bad for the tires. And especially in this, the racing tires are more delicate than the street tires. So the road tires and the off-road tires will suffer less from this. Anyway, in general, if we buy a couple of stands, which may cost a few euros, that will be the best option to keep our bike safe. If I do this, there are some situations where the tire might break, and I will explain you why. When the tire goes below a certain temperature, the material of the compound might crystallize, like water that becomes ice. So what happens? It happens that if the tire crystallizes and it gets hit, it might break. You might actually see some cracks along the tire. This phenomenon is called cold cracking. For the street and off-road tires, this temperature is actually very low, so there's no need to worry about it. That's also because it happens that we use the bike below zero during the winter in some situations. Maybe not the bike, but the scooter. So those tires are meant to resist in those situations. This is not true for the racing tires, because this temperature for these tires is around 0 degrees. This is true for the racing tires and also for the TD tires. And why does this happen? Because these tires are meant to be used at high temperatures. For example, if we think about the racing tires, they're meant to be used at 80, 90, 100 degrees. And you will never going to use a motorbike with racing tires without tire blankets in winter with 0 degrees. So they're not meant to do that. So this is something very important. If the racing tire or slick tire is around 0 degree or below, we must be very careful in handling it. We don't have to toss it, we don't have to hit it, and we don't even have to put it on and off the wheel. If we need to remove the tire from the wheel and it's very cold, we should put on the tire blankets just for a few minutes, just to warm it up around 10-20 degrees, and then we can take it off the wheel. Instead, if the tire is warm, and I'm talking about 10 degrees or more, we can do whatever we want. If we see some cracks on the tire, which means that the cold cracking happened, the tire is not going to blow up, but if I was you, I would never use the tire anymore. The tires new, and with new I mean the tires that have never been used, do not lose performance if they have been stored properly. And this is something important because we always see people discussing on social networks and forums saying that they will never buy a 1, 2, 3 years old tire because it expired. This is not true. And I want to remind you that all this information have been given to me by Metzeller. Just to give you an example, last year an Italian superbike rider won the race by using a 4 years old tire. So that means, considering that the level is very high, that the tire was good. Now, how do you store the used tires? If we talk about used tires, there are some important differences. If we're talking about road tires or off-road tires, nothing changes. You can put the bike in the garage in September with the tire at the 80%, and when you take the bike back out in April, the tire will be at 80%. Nothing changed, even if you take it back after 1 or 2 years. But this is different for the racing tires and also for the TD tires. If you take a used tire and leave it there without using it, it loses performance over time, even if you're not using it. For example, you had the track day in October using the Metzeller K1, the tire is at 80%, you put it in the garage, and after 6 months, the tire is at 70%, for example. It lost performance without using it. Sometimes it may happen to see some blue spots on the tire. This is due to some components of the tire which migrate towards the outside of the tire. It's nothing bad, it doesn't mean the tire is gone, it just means that the tire is used and then it has been unused for a long time. So when you see those blue spots, it means the tire is used and old. This was about the racing tires. But it's quite different if we talk about the Metzeller TD tires. There are some very special tires which has been recently introduced by Metzeller, and they are some kind of revolution. Because these are the perfect tires for the amateurs, for a few reasons. First of all, they have a great grip. It's a slick tire, so it's not meant to go shopping, it's meant to go riding on track. It doesn't need tire blankets, and this is very important. You can go riding without tire blankets, because it takes just a few corners to warm up. This is not true with the racing tires. Remember, never use the Metzeller K1, K2, K0 without the tire blankets. They are not meant to be used like that. They are super long lasting, you can use them for many days, having the same performance. It's reversible. It means that if it's too much used in one side, you can just reverse it and keep riding. This is true only for the rear tire. And it doesn't lose performance if you don't use for a long time. So if the tire is used, you put it away in October and you put it back in April, you will find the same performance. Obviously, if you take it back after 2-3 years, it may have lost some performance. I'm talking about used tires, okay? Not new tires. So this is the ideal tire for the amateurs. And the reasons for me are 3. First of all, the racing tire, in every session you do, it loses performance. So the amateur, which needs 1, 2, 3 sessions to get confident with the bike, if he's using a racing tire, he will lose confidence with the bike, because after each session, he will find a different bike. Second, if the tire has too much grip, it's not easy to ride. It might be even more difficult. One example, last year in Misano, once I put the super performing tire, I did the same lap time that I had with the hard tires, 60 laps old. And third, if you keep it for a long time without using it, it doesn't lose performance. Now, what does it mean, used tire? For the road tires and off-road tires, it's clear. Used means you have used the bike. But for the racing tires, what does it mean? If you put the tire on the wheel, you warm it up with the tire blanket, then the rain comes, you don't ride. Is the tire used or not? If we talk about losing performance, it counts as new. So if you store it back in your garage and you take it back after 1 year, it didn't lose performance. But if you used it even for just one lap, even if you went slow, it counts as used. So it will lose performance. One important thing to notice is that Metzeller always suggests that at the end of the day, when you go back to the pit lane after the last session and you still have your tires warm, they suggest you to cool them down, putting on the tire blankets switched off, so they cool down gently. This is true also if you put on the tire blankets on the new tires and you don't ride because the rain comes. The best thing to do is to unplug the tire blankets and leave the tire cooling down for 1 or 2 hours. If some dust go on the tire, no problem, the tire is good, it will clean once you go back on track. But if some oil or fuel go on the tire, it's better to throw the tire away and never use it anymore, because the oil and the fuel may react with the component of the tires, making it lose performance. How do you inflate the tire? Sometimes we heard about nitrogen, but for the motorbike tires it's not used. That's because when you are putting the tire on the wheel, we already have some air on it, which contains oxygen, nitrogen, and all the other gases in the atmosphere. So it's impossible to inflate the tire with just nitrogen. So it's not used. What they use is dry air, which is the air without water. Another very important thing is the cap. Sometimes we heard that it's not important because you can ride even without the cap on the valve. That's wrong, because when the tire is spinning very fast, the valve might open a little bit and lose some air. That means that after 20 or 30 minutes, you might lose 0.1, 0.2 bar, which for the racing tires, it's super important. So always put the cap on. How do you put the tire on? Now, I don't know if you've ever seen those small weights on the wheel. They are used to balance the tire. And what does it mean? Usually the tire is not perfectly balanced. And if it's not balanced, it might vibrate. For example, even 30 grams might make this vibrate. So especially in racing, sometimes it happens that in the wheel we have the sensors. So what do the best teams do? First they balance the wheel, then they put on the tire and balance the wheel again in order to minimize the error. So that's everything you need to know about how storing the tires. I wanted to say thank you to Metzeller for having provided me with all these super important information, and thanks to you for watching this video. Bye bye!